Well, hi, everybody. It's certainly been a while since we've talked about Aristotle. It's been a while since we've seen each other. I imagine that your mind has been involved in some things that are probably more immediate than someone like Aristotle who's been dead for a couple of thousand years. But, of course, we need to go on with our material as an online class. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to some of the beginning stuff that we've talked about regarding Aristotle, and we're going to work our way up to the conclusion where we were going to conclude anyway. And then after this material, you'll be taking exam 2, which will have to do specifically with Aristotle and this text, Politics. So, if you remember way back when we talked about how to read political theory, and we talked about things like the central theme or problem, and with Aristotle, we found that the central theme or problem was his concern with finding the most just way to govern, which of course is very similar to Plato's. And his theory of humanity is different from Plato's. And remember, that's that we all have a natural purpose within us. And just as a reminder, that's going to lead us to the concept of teleology. And remember also that Aristotle is, he's an elitist, and he believes that some people are inherently meant to be leaders and some people are inherently meant to be followers. His theory of structure, if you remember, it is that everything naturally moves towards its purpose. So remember, this has to do with teleology also, that things in nature all have a purpose built within their souls, and all things within nature naturally move towards their purpose. And then we also mentioned that if you prevent anything in nature from reaching its purpose, that is against nature, it's unnatural, it's evil, and it's unjust. And so that's going to be something that's really important to remember when we talk about what he sees as unjust constitutions, which is going to be towards the end of our discussion about Aristotle. His theory of value is that justice is the key, and that justice is found within the purpose of all things in nature, and that unlike Plato, he believes that disunity is a good thing. So just to remind you, so these are things that we've already talked about, that he believes that a city shouldn't be too unified, because if a city is too unified, then it becomes something else. We'll get there in a little while, but that is something that we've talked about in the past. And his theory of action is based on observation. And if we observe and we use good reasoning, that should direct us towards the most just form of government. Let's see, we talked about Aristotle's background, the very basics. I'm just going to sort of go through this quickly because these are things that we've talked about. We mentioned that he grew up in Macedonia, that his father was the physician to the king there. So Aristotle was born as a member of the elite class. And remember, as I wrote on this slide up here, that's always worth remembering. That's largely why he assumes that some people are intended to be leaders and some people are intended to be philosophers. Remember that at age 17, he was sent to Plato's academy, and that's where he was a star student. He studied directly under Plato. He studied there for 20 years until Plato died. And then after Plato died, he moves back to Macedonia, and he becomes the tutor for Alexander the Great. He does that for about 5 years, and then he moves back to Athens and opens up his own school. And that's where he did most of his teachings. So, unlike Plato, Aristotle, we said, is not a citizen. So he admires Athens greatly. He loves the urban life. He loves the idea of people arguing in the street. And remember, what was his version of justice? That's right. His version of justice is to actually determine what justice is. Remember that political discourse itself is justice because it's based on man's highest telos, something we're going to talk about in a little bit. Let's see. Important to remember that he does not discount democracy as much as Plato discounts democracy. So we've been talking about some of these differences with Plato already. Again, he's not an Athenian citizen. He's more open-minded to democracy. He's more open-minded to different types of government. We mentioned that he collected constitutions from all over the world, something that we're going to talk about towards the end of our discussion about Aristotle. We said that he's less idealistic than Plato, where Plato had his Republic, which we said was a utopian treatise based on this ideal that everybody can become unified. Aristotle, on the other hand, thought that that was way too idealistic, so he's much less idealistic than Plato. And again, he expects and encourages disunity in the city. And also remember that he studied a lot of different subjects like ethics, music, poetry, metaphysics, and nature. And the big difference, and probably the reason that he never was asked to take over the academy after Plato, is that he didn't believe in the world of the forms the way Plato and Socrates believed in the world of the forms. So we said with Plato that he believed that any type of physical observation or any type of sensory observation that we can get will mislead us, and so you should always use reason to guide you. Whereas with Aristotle, we said that observation is really the key. So observation and then reason are really the keys to conclusions that Aristotle is going to make. So that's going to be the end of this first short video. We're going to keep our video clips at just 5 to 10 minutes. And that's it. Okay. Talk to you in a minute.